Morning, Thursday, January 30th, 2025. Good morning to those who woke up today, January 30th, 2025. Happy birthday to those whose birthday fell today on January 30th, 2025. And my condolences strongly go out to those we lost last night at the Ronald Reagan Airport. The aircraft and helicopter and what was that? A helicopter and a plane collision that cost the lives of over 65 people. My condolences go out to those who lost their life yesterday in the horrible plane crash that lost so many lives. That was just so disturbing to watch this morning. They're still recovering bodies as we speak. They said the plane crashed into the water at almost 700 miles an hour, so they did not see it coming. That aircraft came from behind. They didn't see it coming. They showed the video. My condolences go out to them and their families. Sure, it's not a good day for them. Well, I gotta go out to College Park. Gotta go see someone about a Samsung washer. It's giving them drain issues, so come ready. Put the drain pump in the Samsung washer. And I do need some gas, so I'll take you guys. Get ready to get into February, guys. Get ready for Valentine's Day. That's all I can say. 268. South. Activate. Skip. Okay. Let's go get some gas. We're headed to College Park. It's 48 degrees outside. It's warming up. Just 20-something degrees last week. And they need to get these cars out the side of the road, man. They need to be towed. Crazy. going down to 69. Let's see which one of the pumps is going to work for me.
Check out empty phone. Please hold while I try to connect you. Hold on.
I should get priority over all your conversations that you're having at this time.
Hey, babe.
Hey, did you get the hamburger I texted you?
Yeah.
Who did you see?
Steve Harvey. Is that who that is?
It sure is.
How did they do that?
That's pretty good. I don't know. So it looked like it, though.
Okay. Yeah, sure do. That's all I see.
I'm out in the street. I'm on my way to College Park.
Oh, okay. All right. You already took care of the other one?
I only got one.
Oh, I thought you said she was in Belize and you had to go.
She's in
to
Belize,
Airbnb.
but I told you I'm going to her Airbnb.
Right, her Airbnb, right.
Right.
That's the only one you had today?
Yeah.
Oh,
Unless
okay.
something else pops up. Gas is $2.69 today.
Is that a good thing?
Went down.
Babe? Hello?
It went down from $2.99.
Oh.
You don't be paying attention, do you?
No.
Right.
I don't pay attention to gas because I need it, so I don't care how much it costs.
You should care how much it costs. I keep telling you.
I should.
Yeah. The
No,
lower the number, the more gas you get.
Okay,
Come
well,
on,
it
black
doesn't matter.
folks.
I gotta get the gas either way. If it's $5
But you want more
a
for
gallon,
you want more for the money.
I got you.
You got that part. So if it costs let me ask you a question then. If it costs $2.99 a gallon at one gas station and $2.79 at another gas station, which one you going to?
Well, if I'm at the $2.99 one, I'm most likely just gonna pump right there.
I said if there's one gas station at $2.99 a gallon and there's another one at $2.69 a gallon, which one you going to? I didn't say how far apart they were.
I guess the $2.69.
Why?
Because you said
Said what?
that is cheaper.
Well, what does that mean?
That is cheaper than the other one.
I mean, but what does that mean to you? What does cheaper mean?
I get more gas.
Does
Right?
it? Did
So
the
less
light?
price.
Did the light come on yet?
No. Because it don't matter.
It means that you're getting more for your money.
Okay,
Did the light come on yet?
No, it didn't come on.
If the
What
gas
light?
is $2.69 at one gas station and $2 at the other gas station, which one you going to?
The $2.
Why?
Oh God, I don't, because I'll get more gas for my money.
Did the light come on yet?
Yeah, I guess that's the answer you wanted. Jesus Christ.
Okay, now you get it. Now you know
I'm in
why
over
it's
here.
so
I'm in
important.
gas class.
Now you know why it's so important to watch the numbers. Because you might need that little bit of extra gas to get to the next gas station.
Okay, focus. I don't want to hear about that gas. But here's something we need to look into. We probably need to put a QR code on the invitations when it comes to our wedding registry with Amazon and Bed Bath & Beyond. Do you know how to do that?
It's called a QR code maker on your shopping cart.
how would we transfer it
you download the QR code maker. Okay?
to what?
Into
To the
your
shopping cart?
phone. Into your phone.
Oh, on my phone. Okay, into my phone.
And then you type in the address that you're wanting them to go to into the QR code maker. And then you click create. And bam!
Okay, now how is that going to get on our invitations?
Once you get the QR code, you can have it printed on the invitation.
Okay, that's what we at right now.
You have to download the QR code maker to know what your code is. Once you create the code, you can transfer it to the card. Who's doing all this printing?
You are.
No. Don't blaming me for some bullshit. I'm not experienced.
You are.
I think what you should do is just go ahead and handwrite every one of them. It's your handwriting.
Are you kidding me?
All 50 of them. Just like you had me do all 50 addresses.
Well, see, right now you won't have to do. Oh,
I got arthritis
you are.
and my hand be cramping, so you can't use me no more.
Well, you're gonna have to. How are we gonna mail these out to the people if you don't write it out?
I'll mail them out.
Okay, so two things. We're gonna need a roll of stamps, and we're going to need you to write the addresses from the address book onto the envelopes.
No, you do all the writing. Cause I got hand cramp. You know how my pinky finger be crawling behind my other finger and the.
Remember mine did the same thing?
No, I don't remember that. No, I don't remember none of that.
You don't remember mine did the same thing?
Nope. You know, you be rubbing my hands to get them back to moving. They just lock up like Fred Sanford.
And mine did the same thing.
You need to get on that pronto, babe.
I know,
Why don't you find out, just Google at 305-2 who you can take your cards to. Because you could have had all that done at Amazon.
No, Amazon don't custom. They didn't custom make it. All they do is send out, the glitter gold envelopes with the envelopes and da-da-da-da-da. They don't custom.
Look up who in Loganville can do it for you.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing. That's okay. Okay, I'll do that.
Call them and ask them, can they put the QR code on there as well?
Okay, but we gotta find the QR code from our Amazon.
No.
You
download the QR code app into your phone. You create it yourself.
Okay, we're gonna have to do that this weekend, babe, because I don't know. I'm not following.
Download the QR code maker in your phone right now. Okay?
I can't. I'm busy. I can't do that right now. So listen.
And this is how it works. Once you download the QR code maker, right? It'll ask you to type in the address of the website that you wish for your consumers to visit. And once you put it in there, it hits create, and then bam! Out comes the QR code. So we can. I'll show you how to do that.
You're gonna have to do it. Thank you. Thank you, I appreciate that. So the arch, do you want it 7 feet? It's inside of my cart. Do you want a 7'3", a 10'14"? Like they have different sizes. So what I'm going to do is send you different ones.
What size
and you
is
tell
the
me which
7
one
feet?
you like.
How much is 7 foot cost?
Don't worry about the prices.
How much cost?
Hold on.
Police up here big time. So what must have happened? Must be the same. taking them down. He's looking at the VIN number. He's all in there. He's Jamaican. That means it's not his car. That motherfucker in the back seat. Got it. Got him.
We're going to be in North Carolina being that we're going to be in North Carolina for Valentine's weekend, that we can just hand deliver some of the invitations, right?
Sound like a good
Wouldn't
move.
that be? Yeah, we can do that for some of them. Those who are right there in North Carolina, we just hand deliver it to them. And the other ones, you know, like my girlfriend in Puerto Rico, of course, I'll mail her. Some of them I'll mail, and some of them we can hand out. What do you think?
I think that's a great idea.
Okay, so right now, you can tap it or slide the card right here for me.
Tomorrow I got to be.
So you just like we had went to your cousin's McDonald's, we can give her one. And Lisa, Harvey, Mom.
Hello?
I'm here, babe. You got it, babe. Hold on.
blow my mind. I feel so rich. I feel like a billionaire. I'm shopping like a billionaire.
Neither of you. To think that you would denigrate Bob Mueller's service to our country and call him a swamp creature is an indication of the depths your political views take you. The FBI plays a critical role in keeping America safe from terrorism, violent crime, and other threats. Our nation needs an FBI director who understands the gravity of this mission and is ready on day one, not someone who is consumed by his own personal political grievances. The American people deserve an FBI director focused on keeping our families safe from terrorism, drug trafficking, and violent crime, not this checklist of grievances we find in this book. Mr. Patel, your record makes it clear you're not that person. I yield.
Thank you, Senator Durbin. Before I call on Senator Tillis, I want to clear up something the way I see it, and I think I'm going to invite everybody that it can be cleared up. This business about what Mr. Patel said about cowards in uniform.
This is Doug. Can I help you?
Good morning. My name is Tanisha with Armis Home. We have your company on our preferred network. How are you?
All right. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for asking. I was calling to see if you're able to accept a job in the Dalton area. I have a customer who has an LG refrigerator not cooling.
No, I don't do Dalton, man. Not the LG.
Thank you. I appreciate it. You have a good day.
Yep. Not handle LG refrigerators.
To think that you would denigrate Bob Mueller's service to our country and call him a swamp creature is an indication of the depths your political views take you. The FBI plays a critical role in keeping America safe from terrorism, violent crime, and other threats. Our nation needs an FBI director who understands the gravity of this mission and is ready on day one, not someone who is consumed by his own personal political grievances. The American people deserve an FBI director focused on keeping our families safe from terrorism, drug trafficking, and violent crime, not this checklist of grievances we find in this book. Mr. Patel, your record makes it clear you're not that person. I yield.
Thank you, Senator Durbin. Before I call on Senator Tillis, I want to clear up something the way I see it, and I think I'm going to invite everybody that it can be cleared up. This business about what Mr. Patel said about cowards in uniform, it's a mischaracterization of what he actually said. So I'm going to invite you to listen to the interview Mr. Patel gave that linked to his post to hear what he actually said. When he said cowards in uniform, he was talking about senior Pentagon leadership failing to mobilize the National Guard to protect the Capitol. His comments had nothing to do with police. Mr. Patel made his comments while discussing an article in the New York Times exposing grave miscommunication between the Department of Defense and the D.C. National Guard. So I would encourage people to follow up on that. Senator Tillis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member, colleagues on the Senate Judiciary Committee. It's my honor to introduce KASH Patel, President Trump's nominee to be FBI Director. I've completed due diligence on his life and career, and I'm convinced that KASH possesses significant expertise and ironclad commitment to justice, and he's an outstanding choice to lead the FBI. KASH's parents are Indian immigrants of Gujarati ancestry. They're up here in the front row. The Gujarat state is a melting pot of religions, including Hinduism, Islam, Jainism, with temples, mosques, and other religious sites scattered across the state. His father was raised in Uganda, but his family had to flee the country to escape repression under Idi Amin. His mother was born in Tanzania. They met and married in India and ultimately made their way to New York City by way of Canada, where his parents, along with 7 brothers and sisters, and their spouses and at least a half a dozen kids lived under the same roof. His parents raised Kash in the Hindu faith, and they instilled in him the values of hard work and education. Kash is a devout Hindu, and consistent with his faith, he's shown respect to people of all faiths. Kash attended the University of Richmond, where he earned his bachelor's degree in criminal justice and history. He went to Pace University School of Law, where he earned his JD, and an international law certificate from the University College of London, Faculty of Laws. Kash began his career as a public defender in Florida, where he led or co-led more than 60 jury trials in state and federal court. Kash clearly demonstrated a devotion to upholding the rule of law and defending the rights of individuals. Kash led the defense of Jose Buitrago in United States versus Buitrago, a high-profile case in Florida in 2015. Buitrago was one of the Colombian nationals arrested in a major drug bust involving Operation Backrim. Kash and his co-counsel successfully argued that key evidence was withheld by the prosecution, leading to Buitrago's release. I suspect some of Kash's disdain for prosecutorial misconduct stemmed from this experience. Kash was hired as a senior counsel on the House Permanent Select Subcommittee on Intelligence Committee, in 2017. He told me he distinctly remembers my friend Trey Gowdy comment shortly after they were introduced. He said in Trey's dialect, "Kash, Congress is where righteous investigations go to die. I hope you're ready." I think Kash was ready, and he went on to establish a solid reputation for pursuing the facts, and from there, he held senior posts at the NSC, the Department of Defense, and the DNI. Since leaving the administration in 2020, Kash has written articles and books on national security, law, and governance. Through his work as an author, Kash continues to advocate for justice and transparency, and to be ever vigilant in defending our great democracy and the rule of law. Colleagues, I created a Kash bingo card that I have available to any of my colleagues who would like it on the other side of the aisle. Some may view this as an unserious caricature and not appropriate for this committee. I think we'll have words like enemies list and deep state. I've already X'd out 4 boxes in the opening statements alone. The fact of the matter is, some people will be here to simply substantiate a false narrative. At worst, they may be just going through an unfounded litany of quotes and half-truths, some of which have already been dispelled by the chairman after the opening statements. Mr. Chair and Ranking Member, in my 10 years in the Senate, I hope I've established a reputation for being fair, doing my homework, and taking tough positions that have been met with harsh criticism. Heck, I've even been censured by my entire state and 30 counties for taking tough positions. And I stand by those decisions today and my decision to support Kash Patel. When President Trump announced his intent to nominate Kash, I contacted Trey Gowdy and others who worked with Kash, and they gave me glowing recommendations. So I called Kash on December the 2nd, and I offered to help him with his nomination. Since then, we have spent hours together, in person and on the phone. I've asked him difficult questions, and I've urged him to reach out to members across the aisle. In fact, Kash Patel has met with 60 members of the U.S. Senate. Every member except the last 3 who were sworn in, and the majority of the members on the other side of the dais in this committee and members off the committee. Chair Grassley, Ranking Member Durbin, friends and colleagues on the committee, I've completed my due diligence of KASH Patel, and I am honored to provide my strongest recommendation for his confirmation. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for that introduction. Before I swear you, I want to make clear that before you give your statement, if you want to introduce family and friends in the audience, you're welcome to do that. Would you please stand? Raise your hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give to the committee will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do, Mr. Chair.
Okay. You may proceed.
Chairman Grassley, Ranking Member Durbin, and members of the Judiciary Committee, thank you for the opportunity to appear today. I must start with a word of prayer for the tragic accident that befell our nation last night, where we lost civilians and service members. I pray for their families. I pray for law enforcement and military personnel, and I pray for their souls, and hopefully God will find them peace in the near future. I'd like to welcome my father, Pramod, and my mother, Anjana, who are sitting here today. They traveled here to get here from India. My sister's also here, Nisha. She also traversed the oceans just to be with me here today. It means the world that you guys are here. Jai Shri Krishna. I wouldn't be here today without their guidance, their unwavering support, and their relentless love. When President Trump informed me of his intention to nominate me as the director of the FBI, I was deeply honored. Sitting here today, I carry not only the dreams of my parents, but also the hopes of millions of Americans who stand for justice, fairness, and the rule of law. My commitment to these principles is deeply rooted in my family's history, which has profoundly shaped my worldview. My father fled Idi Amin's genocidal dictatorship in Uganda, where 300,000 men, women, and children were killed based on their ethnicity, just because they happen to look like me. My mother is originally from Tanzania. She studied in India, as did my dad, and they were married there. They would later emigrate to New York, as the senator pointed out, where I was born, and we were raised in a household of my father's 7 siblings, their spouses, and at least half a dozen children. That's the only way we knew how to do things at the time, in the 70s and 80s, the Indian way. But we would soon learn the American way. These values have shaped and been the driving force of my career in 16 years of government service. Protecting the rights of the Constitution is of the utmost importance to me and has been every single time I've taken that oath of office. The recent terrorist attacks in New Orleans tragically claimed the lives of 14 innocent Americans and serve as a stark reminder that our national security is at threat, both internally and externally. The FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and the Department of Justice, where I served, play a pivotal role in securing our freedoms and our safeties for American citizens. If confirmed as the next FBI director, I will remain focused on the FBI's core mission. That is to investigate fully wherever there is a constitutional factual basis to do so, and to never make a prosecutorial decision that is solely the providence of the Department of Justice and the Attorney General. For the first 8 years after law school, I served as a public defender, first for Miami-Dade County and later for the Southern District of Florida. During that time, I represented some pretty awful human beings, charged with some pretty heinous crimes. But what I learned there was the core value that has been enshrined in me since, that due process must be provided without bias to all Americans. And if we cannot provide due process to the worst, then there can be no due process for anyone, and our constitutional republic fails. But I battled on that hill for that due process. I would later serve in the Obama Justice Department as a terrorism prosecutor in the National Security Division, where we successfully contributed to the prosecution of terrorist organizations like Al-Qaeda, Al-Shabaab, and others. I was honored to receive the 2017 Assistant Attorney General's Award from Loretta Lynch for my work in helping the Ugandans bring members of Al-Shabaab to justice for murdering 74 innocent people, including an American. I would also receive the Human Intelligence Award from the intelligence community for related work on that mission. My experiences at the National Security Division and would later be followed by my experiences on the National Security Council as Senior Director for Counterterrorism, and later as the Deputy Director of National Intelligence, responsible for the production, creation, and promulgation of the Presidential Daily Briefing, our nation's most sensitive classified information and secrets to protect our country. My time in the White House was preceded by a time right here in Congress as a staffer on the House Intelligence Committee, where I spearheaded the investigation that exposed serious FISA, Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act abuses by members of the Department of Justice and the Federal Bureau of Investigation. That misconduct eroded the public trust in our FBI. The erosion of trust, as Chairman Grassley pointed out, is all too low today. 40% of Americans have trust in the FBI. In order to get it back, there's a twofold track, Senator. One, violent crime is exploding in this country, and we cannot afford to allow it to run away. We must tackle violent crime. Just in 2023 alone, there was 100,000 rapes, 100,000 drug overdoses, and 17,000 homicides. The priority of the FBI, if I'm confirmed, will be to ensure that our communities are protected and safeguarded and our children have parks to play in and not needles to walk over. The way we do this, we let good cops be cops. We let law enforcement, and we provide them with the tools necessary and resources they need to get after violent crime. The second way we do this on equal track is aggressive constitutional oversight from Congress. The public trust can only be restored if there is full transparency, and I am committed to that full transparency. Members of Congress have unfortunately submitted hundreds of questions that have been unanswered by the FBI in recent times. That will not occur if I am confirmed. All appropriate requests for information will be responded to expeditiously and fully. I am committed to working alongside the dedicated men and women of the FBI. They are warriors of justice, and I will always have their backs because they have the backs of the American people. I look forward to answering your questions, and I want to take a moment to thank my family, my friends, people who traveled here, and my entire team that has made this day possible. God bless America, and I look forward to your questions.
Seven minutes first round, is that right? 7 minutes for 3 minutes the second round. Mr. Patel, I'm not going to go through all the things that you've done through your career because I said those in my opening statements, but Democrats on the committee say you don't have experience. What are you most proud of from your career in public service?
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the question. It's really humbling to be afforded the opportunity to have served this country for 16 years. But I think what I'm most proud of is my work in national security, protecting the no-fail mission, returning American hostages, killing high-value terrorists that brought hate and destruction to our shores. I've served that mission in Democratic and Republican administrations, and it is the one mission that we cannot fail, and it is the one mission where the FBI must play a critical role.
Okay. As you well know, and you and I discussed this in my office, whistleblowers are critical to rooting out waste, fraud, and abuse. Their courage to come forward and make legally protected disclosures about government wrongdoing benefits the country. I think they're politically, they are good American citizens, just want the government to do what it's supposed to do. I think they're treated by bureaucracies, not just in the FBI, but throughout the bureaucracy, like skunks at a picnic. Will you protect whistleblowers from retaliation, unlike former Director Wray, and promote a culture at the FBI that values whistleblowers' important contributions?
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman. I share in your beliefs about the importance of whistleblowers.
So we've spent a lot of taxpayers' money ruining whistleblowers. Will you commit to ensuring that no taxpayer money will be used to identify and retaliate against whistleblowers?
Senator, if I'm confirmed, it will not.
Okay. You and I have heard a lot of criticism about various statements about January 6th. You said, quote, those who broke actual laws should be prosecuted, end of quote. But you've also called out the partisan nature of prosecutions and compared how the Biden Justice Department treated January 6th defenders with how they ignored many other crimes. Those include crimes related to illegal immigration. Those include crimes related to illegal immigration, as well as riots that took place around the country. So explain your position on January 6th to this committee, and how do you respond to critics who say that you're anti-law enforcement?
Mr. Chairman, I greatly appreciate the question, the opportunity to discuss that. If anyone wants to consider me as anti-law enforcement, then look at my 16 years in government service. Whether I was trying 60 jury trials in state and federal court upholding the rights of the indigent and breathing life into constitutional due process, or later as a national security prosecutor, where I served this country and overseas, and later when I was a Joint Special Operations Command civilian embedded with SEAL Team 6 and Delta, chasing down some of the most high-value targeted terrorists there are on this earth and successfully achieving a mission end state. I have always respected law enforcement. I have taken that oath and will take that oath again, God willing, to be the next director of the FBI. As for January 6th, I have repeatedly, often, publicly, and privately said there can never be a tolerance for violence against law enforcement. And anyone that commits an act of violence against law enforcement must be investigated, prosecuted, and imprisoned. And on January 6th, I said the same thing about acts with my top mission priority, not politics. And that is my love of this country, to protect our laws and our way of life. And it was no different. If there's any ever corruption, I have been the first to call it out. And I will continue to call out corruption in government service, because it is a privilege to serve this nation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Outside of this committee, and some people on this committee have accused you of promoting the QAnon movement. My colleagues have already asked your future boss, Mr. Bondi, many questions about this. I think it's easy to see these attacks for what they are, guilt by association. Are you a follower or promoter of QAnon?
No, Senator. In fact, I have publicly, including in the interviews provided to this committee, rejected outright QAnon baseless conspiracy theories or any other baseless conspiracy theories. They must be addressed head on with the truth, and I will continue to do that. And I will always continue to support Americans who support law enforcement, our military, and want a secure border.
Over the past 4 years, the FBI and Justice Department have weaponized law enforcement towards partisan ends. This has affected you personally. You, along with even members of my staff, were the victims of FBI overreach when they secretly subpoenaed your records during the investigation into Crossfire Hurricane. Inspector General Horowitz of Justice Department was right to say actions like this have a quote unquote chilling effect on whistleblowers. How do you intend to make sure that this kind of misconduct never happens again?
Senator, this may be one of the scenarios that most uniquely qualifies me to take command at the FBI. Having been the victim of government overreach and a weaponized system of justice and law enforcement, I know what it feels like to have the full weight of the United States government barreling down on you. And as the Biden Inspector General determined, those activities by the FBI and DOJ were wholly improper and not predicated upon law and facts. I will ensure, if confirmed, that no American is subjected to that kind of torment, to that kind of cost, financially and personally. And most importantly, I will make sure that no American is subjected to death threats like I was, and subjected to moving their residences like I was, because of government overreach, because of leaks of information about my personal status. If confirmed as FBI director, Mr. Chairman, you have my commitment that no one in this country will feel that pain.
Senator Durbin.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Patel, I woke up this morning to National Public Radio, and they had an item on there about what has happened to those who were given blanket clemency by President Trump. One of these individuals was a man named Matthew Huddle. Are you familiar with him?
I'm sorry, what was the last name?
Matthew Huddle.
If you could remind me, Senator.
Well, I was reminded again this morning. He's a man who's been found guilty of numerous crimes. The one described this morning was an outrageous situation where he beat his 3-year-old child to a point where the poor kid couldn't even sit down for a week. Mr. Huddle was one of the demonstrators who came to the Capitol on January 6th. He was incarcerated and charged with, and pled guilty to crimes that he had committed, violence against police officers. After he was released by President Trump, he returned to his home state of Indiana. A few days later, he was stopped on the road, pulled a gun on a policeman. The policeman, sheriff's deputy, turned and shot and killed him. This is not the only instance of a person who received President Trump's clemency committing another crime. Peter Schwartz was mentioned this morning on the radio. 38 criminal convictions, 38. He'd been sentenced to 14 years in prison. He was released because of the president's unconditional clemency, which was given to him as well. So I guess my question is this. Was President Donald Trump wrong to give blanket clemency to the January 6th defendants?
Thank you, Ranking Member. A couple of things on that. One, the power of the presidential pardon is just that, the president.
Well, I concede he has the authority. I'm asking, was he wrong to do it?
And as we discussed in our private meeting, Senator, I have always rejected any violence against law enforcement, and I have, including in that group, specifically addressed any violence against law enforcement on January 6th, and I do not agree with the commutation of any sentence of any individual who committed violence against law enforcement.
So do you think that America is safer because these 1,600 people have been given an opportunity to come out of serving their sentences and live in our communities again?
Senator, I have not looked at all 1,600 individual cases. I have always advocated for imprisoning those that cause harm to our law enforcement and civilian communities. I also believe America is not safer because President Biden's commutation of a man who murdered 2 FBI agents, Agent Kohler's and Williams' family, deserve better than to have the man that point blank range fired a shotgun into their heads and murdered them released from prison. So it goes both ways.
Leonard Pelletier was in prison for 45 years. He's 80 years old, and he was sentenced to home confinement. So he's not free, as you might have just suggested.
He killed 2 FBI agents.
That's true, he did, and he went to prison for it and should have. My question to you, though, is do you think America is safer because President Trump issued these pardons to 1,600 of these criminal defendants, many of whom violently assaulted our police in the Capitol?
Senator, America will be safe when we don't have 200,000 drug overdoses in 2 years. America will be safe when we don't have 50 homicides in a day.
So you just won't answer the question. I'm going to say, I don't think we're safer with Matthew Huddle was sent back to Indiana. I don't think we're safer with Peter Schwartz. I could go through a long list of individuals, some of who were wanted in states, members of this committee. Let me move to another topic if I can. Tell me about your J6 choir. What is that?
Well, it's not my choir. It's simply a recording that was utilized to raise funds for families in need of nonviolent offenders.
Who sings on this recording?
I don't know, Senator.
What did you have to do with it?
Simply to raise funds to assist families of nonviolent offenders whose kids needed college education payments and whose rent needed being paid.
My understanding is that the performers on this J6 choir were the rioters who are in prison.
I'm not aware of that, sir. I didn't have anything to do with the recording.
You weren't aware of who made the recording?
No, Senator.
That's interesting. Did you receive any money for selling copies of that music or that recording?
Absolutely not.
Okay. You do have a foundation, though, do you not?
I'm very proud of the KASH Foundation and the $1.3 million we've given to families in need across this country, including active duty service members, police officers, putting kids in college, and helping people in disaster relief areas rebuild their homes and their communities.
1&0 LLC, are you familiar with that?
Sorry?
1&0 LLC?
I believe, Senator, you're referring to the LLC that one of the individuals has his private business with.
Is it part of the KASH Foundation in any way?
Only in that one of the members of the board has that LLC for his outside business.
Andrew Alice?
I believe that's his name, yes.
Yes. Do you know how much was paid to him from your charitable work?
Yes, like any other charity, we had to go out and fundraise, something I'm sure every member of this committee is familiar with. And we used digital marketing campaigns, and I believe we paid a digital marketing company through 1&0 $250,000 to raise $500,000, which we gave away to families in need, like when hurricanes struck Florida, Texas, and North Carolina.
We will be going through the details of your foundation and the expenditures with the questions for record that the chairman has mentioned.
Look forward
to a chance to answer those under oath. Mr. Patel, you've frequently associated with and sometimes praised extremist figures with well-documented histories of racism, anti-Semitism, conspiracies, and the like. In September of 2023, you appeared with Laura Loomer at an event promoting your book, this one here. You shared a photo of yourself and Loomer in which you held her book and she held yours. Just a few months before this event, Ms. Loomer posted on X that the September 11 terrorist attacks were, quote, an inside job. Around that time, she accused Florida's First Lady, Casey DeSantis, of exaggerating her cancer diagnosis to gain voter sympathy. A number of my Republican colleagues on this committee have criticized Ms. Loomer's extremism. One of my colleagues described her as a, quote, crazy conspiracy theorist who regularly utters disgusting garbage. Another called her really toxic. Given all of this, why did you associate with Ms. Loomer?
Senator, as you can see, I took a photograph with an individual who showed up at a book event. I don't believe I'm guilty by association, and I certainly don't believe that an individual who was the first minority to serve as the Deputy Director of National Intelligence for this country is a racist in any way, and I detest any conjecture to the contrary.
You familiar with a Stu Peters? Does that name ring a bell?
I'm sorry, what?
Are you familiar with Mr. Stu Peters?
Not off the top of my head.
He made 8 separate appearances on his podcast. He promoted outrageous conspiracy theories and worked with a prominent neo-Nazi. There are more, Ted Nugent, it goes on, the list goes on. I'm just asking, when it comes to your association with individuals, why are so many of them in this category?
My association, as you loosely define it, is by appearing in media over 1,000 times to take on people who are putting on conspiratorial theories and to devour them of their false impressions and to talk to them about the truth. That is something that I will always continue to fight for, Senator.
Senator Graham.
Thank you. We'll eventually talk about the FBI. That's the job you're up here for, right? Have you ever been subject to racism as an individual?
Unfortunately, Senator, yes. I want to get into those details with my family here.
Let's get into a few of them. Tell me about it.
Well, if you look at the record from January 6th, where I testified before that committee, because of my personal information being released by Congress, I was subjected to a direct and significant threat on my life. And I put that information in the record. I had to move. In that threat, I was called a detestable, and I'll apologize if I don't get it all right, but it's in the record, a detestable sand nigger who had no right being in this country. You should go back to where you came from. You belong with your terrorist home friends. That's what was sent to me. That's just a piece of it. But that's nothing compared to what the men and women in law enforcement face every day. And that's why they have my support.
Okay. Growing up, were you subject to racism?
Yes, sir.
Now, I think the reason you're here has a lot to do with your work on Crossfire Hurricane. Are you familiar with that FBI operation?
I am, Senator.
So Senator Durbin mentioned the church report and the history of abuse, but he failed to mention Crossfire Hurricane. He failed to mention the Horowitz report. Wonder why? If you're waiting for these guys over here to figure that out, you're gonna die waiting. So this is the Nunes memo. You work for Mr. Nunes over on the House side? David Nunes?
Sorry?
Are you familiar with this memo by the Foreign Intelligence Service Act abuses
Yes.
the Department of Justice?
Absolutely.
Did you help write this memo?
I did as a staffer.
Okay, I'm gonna put this in the record.
Thank you.
In this memo, you kind of dissected the abuses of Crossfire Hurricane, right?
I did, Senator.
And the Mueller investigation. So the Crossfire Hurricane investigators, two of them were Strzok and Page. Are you familiar with them?
I am, Senator.
Okay, it was opened up on July the 31st, 2016. And here's what Strzok said. And damn, this feels momentous because this matters. The other one did too, but that was to ensure we didn't F something up. This matters because this matters. So super glad to be on this voyage with you. That's to Page. And Page responds a couple of months later, he's not ever going to be President right, talking about Trump. Strzok, no, he won't. We'll stop it. Is it fair to say that the people in charge of investigating Crossfire Hurricane hated Trump's guts?
Well, you don't have to take my word for it. That statement, along with the statements from the sources.
Are
during the
those days
operations.
over in the FBI, you hope?
Well, if they're not, they will be.
Okay, good. You know who Carter Page was?
I do, Senator.
Do you know that the FBI secured warrants against him on 4 different occasions?
Yes, Senator.
Do you know that the information that they relied upon came from the Steele dossier?
I do.
Was it you that were able to find out that the Steele dossier was a bunch of crap?
Yes, Senator. We followed the money and we exposed the fraud that was the Steele dossier.
And the primary subsource was Ignor Danchenko, right?
That's correct, Senator.
And he was actually a Russian analyst.
That's right.
Are you aware that in January he told the FBI that, let's see, what did he tell the FBI? Steele had no proof to support the statements, that it was just talk. The primary subsource explained to the FBI that his information came from word of mouth and hearsay, conversations he had with friends over beers, and some of the information were statements he heard made in jest. And he told the FBI this in January
That's
of
right.
2017. And they got 2 more warrants after that.
That's correct.
Are you aware that the FBI had volumes of information that the Steele dossier was a bunch of bullshit and nobody ever told anybody at the top?
I am, sir. We exposed.
Or they lied about being told?
That's correct.
So are you aware of the fact that the FISA court rebuked the FBI? Are you aware of the fact that an FBI lawyer went to jail because he misled the court by manipulating a email from the CIA?
I am.
Do you believe that Crossfire Hurricane was one of the most disgusting episodes in FBI history of a corrupt investigation led by corrupt people who wanted to take Donald Trump down?
Yes, sir.
You think that's why you're in this chair today, to fix that?
I think that's a big.
Without Crossfire Hurricane, this guy wouldn't be here. And my friends on the other side, like pulling teeth, Horowitz investigation, the Inspector General labeled this fraudulent at its core, mismanaged at its core, running stop signs. At every turn, they went forward when they should have stopped. The Durham report said it was obviously politically motivated. FBI agents were telling anybody and everybody that would listen, this is not reliable, this is not trustworthy, but they plowed on. And because of you and Trey Gowdy and others, we now know about this. Everybody who signed the warrant under questioning by me said if they knew then what they know now, they wouldn't sign the warrant. Comey said that. Yates said that. Rosenstein said that. The reason you're here is because most of the public, almost every Republican, believes that the FBI has been used continuously in a political fashion, ignoring evidence, making up evidence, lying to get Donald Trump. And when it came to the Hunter Biden laptop, they told every social media outlet in October 2020, oh, that's Russian disinformation. That was BS too. Right before the election, the FBI intervened to shut reporting on the Hunter laptop down as being Russian misinformation, according to Zuckerberg. Do you promise all of us those days are over at the FBI?
Yes, Senator, they are.
Are you proud of what you did to find all that?
Absolutely.
Do you think that's why you're here today, is to make sure that never happens again?
The American people deserve just that.
Thank you.
Senator Whitehouse. Thanks, Chairman. Welcome, Mr. Patel. I remember January 6th. Colleagues running through our halls to flee the mob. Colleagues shouting that rioters should be shot. Us returning to our constitutional business through hallways cleared for us by automatic weapons carrying SWAT teams. None of you, none of us, said those violent rioters should be pardoned. A Republican colleague said such pardons would be hard to believe, even absurd. Your former colleague J.D. Vance said the violent rioters should not be pardoned. Even Jim Jordan said pardons would, and I quote, focus on all the people who didn't commit any violence. Well, Trump pardoned all of them. And there's a lesson in that. Every time you think Trump would never go that far, rethink that. We all seem to agree that violence against police is unacceptable, yet more than 600 people who physically attacked Capitol Police officers were just put back on the street, part of a 1,500-person personal Trump army, now out there with people who have proven themselves willing to do violence on Trump's call. In only 10 days, some are already back committing crimes. We've also tried as a committee together to address the dangers of illicit drug sales over the internet, and I assume we're all against murder for hire. But Trump also just pardoned a dark web operator sentenced to life in prison for trafficking illegal drugs online and accused of soliciting murders for hire. Those pardons, as Mr. Patel has said, are a mistake, but they are also a signal that we are entering a strange and dangerous time. That is the context for today's hearing. Warnings that the FBI could become Trump's enforcer, use the powers of law enforcement to stifle speech and dissent, punish political rivals of either party, and hand out free passes, get out of jail free cards to violent supporters are warnings we should heed. Here are some warnings of this nominee's Trump administration colleagues. Former Attorney General Bill Barr said, this nominee has virtually no experience that would qualify him to serve at the highest level of the world's preeminent law enforcement agency, end quote, and we would never be able to command the respect necessary to run the day-to-day operations of the Bureau. That's for the deputy position. Former CIA Director Gina Haspel was reported threatening to resign rather than have this nominee serve under her. John Bolton, Trump's former national security advisor, said, I didn't think he was qualified. I was forced to hire him. Trump's deputy national security advisor, the nominee's former supervisor, said, his ideas are ludicrous. He's absolutely unqualified for this job. He's untrustworthy. And it's an absolute disgrace to even consider an individual of this nature. That's from Republican appointees who worked with him. And here's what this nominee himself has said about using his office to prosecute journalists. We will go out and find the conspirators, not just in government, but in the media. We're gonna come after you, whether it's criminally or civilly. Is that a correct quotation, Mr. Patel?
Senator, that's a partial quotation.
But it's correct.
In part.
Regarding his publication of his enemies list, Mr. Patel proclaimed, "The manhunt starts tomorrow," and reposted a video depicting him taking a chainsaw to his political enemies. Is that you, Kash Patel, reposting that at the top of that page?
Senator, I had nothing to do with the creation of that meme.
Is that you reposting it, was my question.
And that's me at the top.
You said FBI agents were responsible for the violence on January 6th, and I quote you here, beyond a reasonable doubt. Is that what you said?
That's completely incorrect, and I appreciate the opportunity to address that.
I'll give you an opportunity in writing, but this is my time now.
Have at it.
An Inspector Attorney General investigation found that that was false. And you said we should impeach judges who rule against Donald Trump, who are, in your words, political terrorists. When this nominee tries to explain all this away, keep one thing in mind. He's testified under oath before a Colorado judge who presided over a Trump case in which he was a witness. And the judge found, and I'm quoting here, he was not a credible witness. His testimony is not only illogical, but completely devoid of any evidence in the record. That's from a judge. This is a dangerous time, and I ask all my colleagues to consider whether these plain comments by this person and by his own Trump administration colleagues should be given a blind eye, just overlooked, or whether, like the warnings of pardoning violent January 6 offenders, they're warnings to be heeded. There is an unfathomable difference between a seeming facade being constructed around this nominee here today and what he has actually done and said in real life when left to his own devices. Conduct shows character. And if you look at history, you see the danger of security chiefs in authoritarian regimes becoming the tools of political power. The characteristics that they often show are that they are vengeful, that they are grandiose, that they are intemperate, that they are partisan and blindly loyal, and that they are servile and won't say no. I'm afraid that the history of this nominee's conduct raises those warnings. And I yield my 1 second back.
Before Senator Cornyn, you said you'd like to explain something. I forget the point he made. You can do that now if you want to.
Simply this, Senator. In the collective, all of those statements are taken out of grotesque context. And anyone that thinks my 16 years of service isn't exemplary on how I would proceed if confirmed as FBI is intentionally putting false information into the public ether and creating more public discourse. The only thing that will matter if I'm confirmed as a director of the FBI is a de-weaponized, depoliticized system of law enforcement completely devoted to rigorous obedience of the Constitution and a singular standard of justice.
Before I call on Senator Carnan, I'd like to say that we've heard about the January 6th pardons. I think it's important that we remind people at the same time of some pardons by the previous administration. Thomas Sanders, a kidnapper who murdered a 12-year-old girl named Lexus and her mother, Swell and Roberts. Adrian Peeler, a Connecticut drug kingpin who was convicted in the death of an 8-year-old boy and his mother. Leonard Peltier, that's already been referred to, that murdered 2 FBI agents. And even Director Ray, at that time, former Director Ray, said that shouldn't have happened. And Judge Michael Conahan, who took kickbacks for wrongly sending juveniles for profit detention centers, and Alex Saab, who laundered illicit proceeds for narcotics terrorists, Nicholas Madero, and was a key connection between Venezuela and Iran, and 5 family members of his own family. President Biden did that. Senator.
Welcome, Mr. Patel. Do you believe America is an exceptional nation?
It's the greatest nation.
Your family went through a lot to get here.
They sure did.
And your life story is, I think, a great example of people pursuing the American dream. Do you believe a large part of what makes America an exceptional nation is the rule of law?
It is one of the fundamental precepts that determines that.
And why is that?
Because without a singular application of a rule of law, we go back to the Uganda that my father fled in Idi Amin.
I believe that the 2 most important institutions in America to preserve and protect and enforce the rule of law are the FBI and the Department of Justice. And the sort of politicalization that Senator Graham and others have already talked about during the Crossfire Hurricane investigation or project of James Comey at the FBI, and the abuse of intelligence tools like Title I of Section 702 are a betrayal of American values and adherence to the rule of law. And I think your biggest task is going to be, along with Pam Bondi at the Office of the Attorney General, is to restore the rule of law to the Department of Justice and the FBI. Are you willing to do that?
Absolutely, Senator.
Without regard to partisan affiliation or politics?
Absolutely.
Do you believe President Trump, as the commander-in-chief, needs access to all of the lawfully available intelligence that can be collected by the American intelligence community in order to inform him so that he can make good judgments as commander-in-chief to assure the safety and security of the American people?
Having been responsible for the collection and predication and promulgation of that intelligence, I firmly believe he and every president must have it.
And so you would not support any impractical or perhaps immaterial or unworkable ways to inhibit the flow of that information to President Trump?
No, I would not.
So let me just ask you, you and I have talked about this a number of times, and this has come up before in a number of different contexts. But as I've always said, I think Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act is the most important law that most Americans have never heard of. But when I was questioning my fellow Texan, John Ratcliffe, who now has been confirmed as the director of the CIA, about this, we talked reforms that have been made to Section 702 over the years. This has been an ongoing conversation here in Congress. People like my colleague here, Senator Lee, and others have proposed reforms, which I think have gone a long way to help protect the privacy rights of American citizens. But let me just point out some of the improvements that have been made over the years. This is not the same 702 that was in effect during President Trump's first terms. These are a number of things that we did together on a bipartisan basis to make sure that the balance between the national security interests of the American people and the privacy and constitutional rights of American citizens were protected. Do you agree with that?
Yes, Senator, I do.
And I think Senator Tillis, with his typical outstanding graphics, has a wonderful handout which lays all of that out. But one of the things that's come up, and we've discussed this, is the idea that in order to query lawfully collected intelligence under Section 702, that somehow, if a U.S. person's name is involved, that a warrant would be required. Now, you're a lawyer who's represented defendants in as a public defender. You understand that what probable cause is required, what sort of evidence is required to be produced to a judge in order to get a warrant. Do you believe a warrant requirement is a practical and workable or even a necessary element of 702?
If I may just give some context on that, Senator. Having a background not only utilizing FISA and 702 as a national security prosecutor, but as a civilian at JSOC and later as an intelligence official and the Deputy Director of National Intelligence, 702 collection formulates over 45% of the presidential daily briefing that you referred to earlier.
I actually have heard it's as high as 60%, but anyway, it's a lot.
It's a lot. And the issue for me is not with FISA and 702. The issue has been those that have been in government service and abused it in the past. And so we must work with Congress to provide the protections necessary for American citizens. Dealing with these matters, including hostage rescue operations in real time, which we use FISA collection to find and save American hostages, having a warrant requirement to go through that information in real time is just not comportive with the requirement to protect American citizenry. I'm all open to working with Congress on finding a better way forward, but right now, these improvements that you've made go a long way.
Well, and Director Ratcliffe said that he did not believe that, given the context of 702 collection, whether a foreign target communicates with a U.S. person, that there'd be sufficient evidence to go to the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court or any other court to demonstrate probable cause. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, just in real time, Senator, it's almost impossible to make that function and serve the national no-fail mission.
I think you hit the nail on the head when you point out the lack of trust. Any of these tools can be abused by people who are willing to break the law or abuse these tools or violate the public trust. Director Ratcliffe again used, I thought, a helpful analogy. I'll see if you agree with it. He said the knives in your kitchen have a very useful and beneficial purpose, but they too can be misused. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely, Senator.
And similarly, do you agree that tools like Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence and Surveillance Act can be used appropriately to protect national security, but they can also be abused by people who are willing to cross a line they should not cross?
They're both true, and that's why we need to work together to make sure Americans have trust again in these surveillance measures that we utilize to protect our country.
Thank you.
Senator Klobuchar.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Patel, I think you know that I have great respect for the men and women of the FBI, their mission, fidelity, bravery, integrity. I believe they deserve a director who respects their work and sacrifices, and they deserve a director who's focused on their mission. This is not about bingo cards or games. This is not about revenge. This is about the safety of our country and the people that work in the FBI. And the FBI runs on facts. It runs on truth. Truth matters. And without truth, the whole system breaks down. You said that Donald Trump has every right to tell the world that in 2020, 2016, and every other election in between was rigged by our government because they were. Yes or no, did you say that?
I don't have that statement in front of me. But
Okay, that was from August 27th, 2023 Thrive Time show. I'll put it on the record. These claims made in that statement were rejected by courts, including by Republican judges. Is that correct?
I don't have enough of the facts in front of me to make that assessment.
I will put that statement on the record, but I think everyone in this committee, including the Republican members, knows that these statements were rejected by courts. You were asked about the police officers in the Capitol who testified in the January 6 hearings, and you accused them of lying. Is that correct or not correct?
I don't think that's accurate.
Okay, Joe Packed podcast, March 2024, we'll put it on the record. I was there. The police officers were heroes that day.
Yes.
Did you post on your personal social media account in May of 2024, January 6th, never an insurrection, cowards in uniforms exposed. They broke the chain of command.
I believe you're referencing a post that was shown in part earlier. I don't have it in front of me.
You posted it and it was on your account, and we will again put that out there once more as we go on. I don't want to lose any more time on this, but every one of these, there's a record of it and you haven't answered. You promoted a COVID vaccine reversal or detox supplement. One scientist said, I quote, "None of these substances in any form would minimize side effects from a COVID-19 vaccine." That is preying on innocent people. Did you perform clinical trials before you made that claim?
I'm not a doctor, so no.
But you did promote this supplement and told people that it would reverse or mitigate the side effects from COVID vaccine.
Did I give people an opportunity to make an independent choice for what's best for their families? Yes.
You did that last year, correct?
I don't have it in front of me again, Senator.
Mr. Patel, the FBI tackles some of the most complex threats that we face: terrorists, hostile foreign powers, violent gangs, fentanyl, criminal organizations. Your mission, though, has been to go after people. I've looked at it. I've read this stuff. Yes or no? When Trump wins, did you say this? When Trump wins in 2024 and is in power in 2025, we can prosecute them, referring to Justice Department officials, for an actual RICO statute violation, for criminally organizing the United States government to break the law to rig presidential elections. Did you say that, yes or no?
Again, Senator, you're reading a partial statement, so I'm unable to fully respond.
Okay, again, we'll put it on the record. X22 report podcast 20, that is from, I'll get you the date, about a year ago. One of the names on your list was Bill Barr. Chairman Grassley has called him one of the most capable cabinet officials I've ever been able to vote for. Senator Graham has said, I have nothing but total respect and admiration for the job done by William Barr as Attorney General of the United States. Is Bill Barr on your list of whatever you want to call them, been referred to as an enemies list? You've called them deep state after serving his country as the Attorney General of the United States. Is he on your list because of a personal vendetta?
Well, it's not whatever we want to call it, Senator. With all due respect, it's not an enemies list. That is a total mischaracterization.
I asked you, I actually used the words you used for the list, which was deep state, right? That's what you put at the top.
It is a glossary
against
in
the
the
Attorney
back.
General of the United States. Is it because of a personal vendetta that he's on the list? You're under oath.
I have no personal vendetta against Bill
Okay,
Barr.
he said about you, you would never be able to command the respect necessary to run the day-to-day operations of the Bureau. That was actually in writing in his book. He had virtually, about you, no experience that would qualify you to serve at the highest level of the world's preeminent law enforcement agency, and that your appointment, as noted by Senator Durbin as Deputy Director to the FBI, would happen over his dead body. Is it, yes or no, why you would put him on the list of deep state as a former Attorney General, Trump Attorney General of the United States, because he wouldn't break the law for Donald Trump? Is that why?
Absolutely not.
As you know, he repeatedly told the president in no uncertain terms that he did not see evidence of fraud that would have affected the outcome of the election. Did you say in February of 2021 that the election stuff was never my job and I stayed out of that stuff?
Again, I don't know what comment you're referring to, but I'm sure you're reading a piece of something.
You said it on Pushback on a podcast. Is it true, though, that in December of 2020, you reached out to the Trump acting deputy attorney general and asked him to investigate a conspiracy theory claiming that people in Italy had used military technology and satellites to remotely tamper with voting machines in the U.S. and switch votes for Trump from Trump to Biden? Is that true?
What was the date?
That was out of December of 2020.
I was chief of staff to the Department of Defense, so I don't believe that's accurate in any way.
That came out of testimony before Congress. I will give it to you. Have you referred to the media as the most powerful enemy of the United States that they have ever seen? Is that right?
Again, you're reading a quote. I take that you're reading it accurately.
HTC 22324. You said we're going to come after the people in the media who lied about American citizens who helped Joe Biden rig the elections. We're going to come after you, whether it's criminally or civilly. Is that something you said?
That's a partial statement of what I said.
Steve Bannon's podcast. You also said you would put the entire fake news mafia press corps on your list. Is that correct? Is that what you said?
I don't have that in front of me.
Danny Johnson's podcast, 82123. You have said that the FBI, including today, you said that they remain utterly corrupt. This is an agency with agents who have taken down terrorists, taken down bank robbers, taken down crime. And you wrote that the FBI has become so thoroughly compromised that it will remain a threat to the people unless drastic measures are taken. Do you know that under Chris Wray's leadership, he took over at a very difficult time, we all know that, appointed by President Trump, that during his tenure, the applications to the FBI has in fact tripled? You think people would be applying to that agency like in those numbers if they thought it was so corrupt?
The American public's trust in it is at 40%. That's an all-time low.
Did you say that the FBI headquarters should be shut down and reopened as a museum of the deep state?
Mr. Chairman, are we allowed to go an extra time?
That's you get a second round. Before I call on Senator Lee.
Could he just answer the question if he said that the FBI headquarters where they investigate cybercrime and terrorism should be shut down and open as a deep state?
Hey, Mr. Chair.
As a museum. Did he say that the headquarters should be shut down?
Mr. Chair.
I deserve an answer to that question. He is asking to be head of the FBI, and he said that their headquarters should be shut down.
Mr. Chair, parliamentary inquiry.
You got anything you want to say, Mr. Patel, before I go on to Senator Lee?
Simply this. If the best attacks on me are going to be false accusations and grotesque mischaracterizations, the only thing this body is doing is defeating the credibility of the men and women at the FBI. I stood with them here in this country. In every theater of war we have, I was on the ground in service of this nation. And any accusations leveled against me that I would somehow put political bias before the Constitution are grotesquely unfair. And I will have you reminded that I have been endorsed by over 300,000 law enforcement officers to become the next director of the FBI. Let's ask them.
Mr. Chairman, I am quoting his own words from September of 2024. It is his own words. It is not some conspiracy. It is what Mr. Patel actually said himself. Facts matter.
You forget that you had 3 minutes in the next round to say what you just said.
Okay, I'll say them again.
Okay. Before I call Lee.
Mr. Chair, just parliamentary inquiry, and it was on time. It wasn't disputing any of the debate, but I intend to keep to my 7 minutes, and I appreciate you keeping everyone to it. If we go over, can we have that decrement against the time in the second round? If a member goes over, that was actually 10 minutes, Mr. Chair.
I'm not sure that I want to. Sometimes it's faster to get things done here, just letting people shout and than it does to shut them up.
Mr. Chairman,
you're a wise man, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
before we go to Lee.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, what do you want?
I love this guy. Mr. Chairman, I'm unlike Senator Tillis. I mean, if we're going to start this, I want an extra 3 minutes.
Well,
now, my friend Senator Klobuchar went 3 minutes over.
So, here what you're saying is the chairman wasn't a very good chairman by not shutting her up but I've gone through this before, and I think I know how to handle it and get
Well,
this done.
I think you're a star-spangled awesome chairman. I just want to say that for the record. But if you're going to let somebody over there go 3 minutes over, I want my extra 3 minutes.
Well, let's see if it's abused by anybody else before we make that decision.
I'm just telling you, I'm going to abuse it.
This is just kabuki theater.
You're a good man, Mr. Chairman.
Before I go to Lee, I want to put a record statement in the record from 56 former FBI agents wrote to this committee to support this nominee. Quote, never has the FBI faced such an urgent and compelling need for comprehensive reform as it does today. Mr. Patel has proven he possesses the breadth of experience required to address these challenges. His leadership, expertise, and vision make him uniquely qualified to guide the FBI through this pivotal moment. For these reasons, we stand in full support of KASH Patel's nomination. Any objection?
They can't touch him. He grabbed a birthday, but
Mr. Patel,
either
while we're talking about your awards, let's talk about the cowards in uniform comment for a moment, can we?
Please.
Would you like to tell us what that was? Put it in context, help the committee understand what that was about.
I think it's important. Thank you, Senator. During that time on January 6th, I was serving as Chief of Staff at the Department of Defense. And days prior, we had received the authorization from the President to issue the National Guard to protect you and your colleagues. But as you know, the law requires a request before the deployment of that guard. That request did not come in until the afternoon of January 6th. Once that request came in, this unfortunately, as has been confirmed by his own testimony, I believe, the Secretary of the Army, Ryan McCarthy, failed to immediately deploy the National Guard and instead took a break to speak to media and make personal phone calls. That endangered the safety of you and your colleagues. And if you look at the Biden Inspector General report, we at the Department of Defense authorized the fastest cold start of the National Guard since World War II and the largest occupation since the American Civil War. And the Biden Justice Department said that we, including myself, as Chief of Staff, when it came to the deployment and employment of the National Guard, acted swiftly and without undue delay.
So that's what you were talking about. And that's why you had the reference to the UCMJ. Tell us what that means.
The Uniform Code of Military Justice is for uniformed officers who betray the code of justice and also act inappropriately. And I thought any delay to have the National Guard arrive on scene here must be called out, whether it was a fellow Republican or not, especially someone under my auspices running the Department of Defense.
Okay, so moments ago when Senator Durbin displayed a chart with that quote, there was a reference in part of it to the UCMJ. That's what it was referring to.
Yes, sir.
Those were the cowards in uniform. Those people who didn't do what they were supposed to do, and a lot of people were put in danger as a result.
That's correct, Senator.
Okay, thank you. That's very good to know. I do find it significant that we've heard all kinds of aspersions cast in your direction by people who do not know you, by people who do not share your worldview, by people who do not share your commitment to the Constitution or your commitment to public service. I find it astounding that they're willing to say this amidst such great ignorance, and I find it equally heartening that the 56 former FBI officials who know you best, who have worked with you, who actually know who you are, who actually share your view of the Constitution, of the view that you ought to be a law enforcement agency and not a weapon of political warfare. These are the people who stand by you. Those who cast aspersions don't share those views. Would I be correct in surmising that?
Yes, sir.
Let's talk about the Fourth Amendment for a moment. The Fourth Amendment tells us that in order for the government to breach your expectation of privacy relative to your person, your home, your papers, if they want to search that, if they want to seize you, they've got to get a warrant. And that warrant has to describe with particularity the persons or places to be searched or to be seized and to connect them up with a showing of probable cause. Now, in the case of FISA 702, we're dealing with a somewhat different universe. Now, moments ago, we heard some discussion about FISA 702, but suddenly we've got a different FISA 702 than what we had when President Trump was last in office. Is that true? Because by my count, FISA 702 has not changed substantively since President Trump was in office last.
That's correct.
Okay.
And there was also some back and forth discussion about FISA 702 and the use of it and the fact that in real time, it might not work to get a warrant. This, in my view, misses the point. The concern that the American people have with FISA 702 is not about the real-time collection of communications regarding foreign targets. The concern is that once those communications are stored, you have within them what are referred to as incidentally collected communications of Americans. Text messages, emails, recorded phone calls, and so forth. If they want to go in and search for someone, let's say you, if someone wants to go into one of those databases after they've been collected, let's see if you're unwittingly communicating with somebody who, unbeknownst to you, happens to be an agent of a foreign power or otherwise under surveillance under FISA 702. If they wanted to search for you, they wanted to enter your name, your phone number, your email address, or some other personal electronic identifier, would they have to get a warrant to do that under current law?
Under current law, I believe so, Senator.
Under current law, they routinely access that without getting a warrant. In order to access it, they've got their own internal procedures. They're not supposed to use this for light or transient reasons. They're supposed to have a perfectly good reason, and yet we found that on hundreds of thousands of occasions, they have accessed the private communications of Americans, searching for those individual Americans by name, by number, by email address, whatever it is, without a warrant or anything tantamount to it. On occasion, they've even been used for overtly nefarious reasons. One agent deciding to look in on his father because he suspected his father might be having an extramarital affair. On another occasion, an agent looked at people who were thinking about renting an apartment from him to make sure they were upstanding citizens and could be trusted. Are these appropriate uses of FISA 702?
No. As you alluded to, the FISA court, it's not me deciding it. The FISA court put out a report in 22 or 23 where 255,000 illegal improper queries of American citizens had occurred. 255,000 reasons why the American people don't trust it. And that's what we must work together, Congress and me, if I'm confirmed as FBI director, restore that trust and protect the mission.
Music to my ears, because I've been a U.S. Senator for 14 years. I've been on this committee the entire time. You were the very first FBI director or FBI director nominee who, when I've asked about this, hasn't said, oh, don't worry about it. We'll handle it okay. We've got good people on the inside. We would never breach the trust of the American people. Do you know what? They were lying. I was willing to believe that they thought they were telling the truth, but they were mistaken. But they were lying. Time has told us that they were lying. You will not lie, and that's why I wholeheartedly support you. In the closing seconds that I have, I want to add my dismay and my disgust for the fact that you've been smeared, you've been attacked. You've been associated with racism, with being a Nazi. You are none of those things, sir. Just as your father lived as a racial minority in Uganda, you've been raised as a racial minority in this country, and you've been nothing but a patriot. Your commitment to the Constitution, to the rule of law, and to the American people is remarkable. And I'm honored to know you, to call you my friend, and to give you my vote. Thank you.
Thank you,
Senator Coons.
Thank you, Chairman Grassley. Mr. Patel, to you and your family, congratulations on your nomination. And we had a constructive conversation last week. I appreciate your taking the time. In particular, a conversation about the prosecution of the World Cup bombing in Uganda that took the life of a Delawarean whose family I knew. I found moving. But the role you've been nominated for is central to our security as a nation, central to the protection of our constitutional rights. And I voted to confirm Trump's previous FBI director, Chris Wray. I believe he's lived up to the Bureau's motto of serving with fidelity, bravery, and integrity. And I also think my vote for him and for many of Trump's cabinet in his first term shows I take my constitutional advice and consent role seriously and do not reflexively vote against his nominees. I look at three factors when I assess a nominee: qualifications and experience, policy views and whether they're in the best interest of the American people, and character and capacity to do the job independently where called for. My colleagues have referenced quotes from Attorney General Barr, National Security Advisor Bolton. The FBI is enormous, 38,000 agents, $9 billion budget. I am troubled by your lack of senior law enforcement leadership. We disagree on some important policy views, but the thing that bothers me the most is a whole series of statements you've made in a variety of settings
that suggest you would struggle to be independent from White House direction or control, as has long been the modern history of the FBI. Who does the director of the FBI work for, Mr. Patel?
Senator, thank you for that question. The immediate report for the director of the FBI is into the Office of the Deputy Attorney General. Then that report is taken into the Office of the Attorney General and ultimately the White House and the chain of command there.
So the FBI works for the White House?
No, the FBI is a member of the Department of Justice and has been the long-standing application.
And who does the Department of Justice work for?
They're in the executive branch, as all members do at the White House.
Attorney General Bondi gave a different answer when I asked her the same question, that they work for the Constitution and the American people. President Trump's made clear in public statements he wants to use the FBI to persecute political adversaries. He's publicly
That's a lie.
Ranging from Liz Cheney to Adam Kinzinger to former Vice President Harris should be investigated and criminally prosecuted.
He didn't say
If
that.
President Trump were to order you to open an investigation into any of these individuals, let's say Vice President Harris, would you?
Senator, this question speaks directly to my ability to leave political bias and allow independent behavior to be the only guiding light. As a public defender, I learned that in the harshest of arenas. And any law enforcement investigation, if I'm confirmed at the FBI, will only be launched on the following qualification: a factual, articulable, legal basis to do so. The president has said publicly that he will allow the FBI to remain independent, and I have said as much as well.
So if FBI agents brought to you a factual legal basis, predication, and you are about to refer it to a prosecutor, and you get a call from the White House saying, don't proceed.
That's a hypothetical.
This is a
Don't
major
answer
donor.
that.
This is someone close to the president. This is inappropriate. What would you do?
Simple. I think you answered it partially in your question. The line agents, the brick agents who are trained to bring investigations on behalf of the FBI will make that decision-making process, and they will only have my full support so long as it upholds absolutely every value of the Constitution, and that's it.
So your predecessor, I went back and looked, and I asked the same questions of Director Comey and Director Wray. Director Wray, quoting former Attorney General Bell, said, "You should be willing to resign if necessary over conduct if you're pressed to engage in it that's unethical, illegal, or unconstitutional. If pressed by the president, would you resign?"
Senator, my answer is simply, I would never do anything unconstitutional or unlawful, and I never have in my 16 years of government service.
Would you be willing to resign the post of FBI director if pressed and given no choice but to obey the order or resign?
Senator, I will always obey the law.
Does obeying the law require you to, as Attorney General Bell said, as FBI Director Wray said, refuse the order or resign?
I'm not familiar with the extent of the law that you're referring to, but my answer is simple in my 16 years of government service. We will simply follow the law. And I've done that in Obama Justice Department, in Republican Justice Departments, in the Obama military, in Republican civilian capacity. I have never once wavered from my constitutional oath of office.
Mr. Patel, your predecessors in this role have been clear that they would be willing to resign if forced or directed to do something unethical or illegal. I'll proceed. One of your past statements that's concerned me, it's both a post on Truth Social and something you said in a podcast, the Sean Morgan report, that your predecessor, Chris Wray, has broken the law. We need to prosecute him. The FBI should go after people like him. And the month before this, in July 2023, you said there should be a criminal referral for FBI Director Wray.
Yeah,
if confirmed, are you going to follow through on these previous statements that Director Wray needs to be prosecuted?
My job is to follow the
Senator, this reminds me of the conversation you and I had, which I greatly appreciated. There is enough violent crime in this country and enough national security threats to this country that the FBI is going to be busy going forward preventing 100,000 overdoses, 100,000 rapes, and 17,000 homicides.
We agree that prosecuting violent crimes should be the principal focus of the FBI. What I'm trying to get to, Mr. Patel, is a whole series of very troubling, to me and many other statements you've made about instead using it to pursue those who might be viewed as political opponents.
And as I told you in your office, I have no interest, no desire, and will not, if confirmed, go backwards. There will be no politicization at the FBI. There will be no retributive actions taken by any FBI should I be confirmed as the FBI director. I told you that in your office, and I'll tell you that again today.
Thank you for that statement. As the co-chair of the Law Enforcement Caucus with Senator Cornyn, one of the things I've worked hard on, and I hope to continue being able to work hard on with this administration, is partnership between federal, state, and local law enforcement to pursue violent crime. You did say, as my colleague asked, and I look for a longer answer, that you want to close the FBI Bureau's headquarters on day one. How would shutting down the FBI headquarters impact its ability to prosecute violent crime and drug traffickers? How is that possibly a serious proposal, Mr.
Thank you
Patel?
for bringing that up and allowing me to answer. It was to highlight the significantly greater point that I was actually making in that interview, which is well documented over and over again. 38,000 FBI employees, 7,500 FBI employees work in the Washington field office and Hoover building alone. If you increase that aperture just slightly to encompass the National Capital Region, that is 11,000 FBI employees work in the National Capital Region. A third of the workforce for the FBI works in Washington, D.C. I am fully committed to having that workforce go out into the interior of the country, where I live, west of the Mississippi, and work with sheriff's departments and local officers, and having one agent prevent one homicide, and having one agent in Washington prevent one rape. And I will do that over and over and over again, because the American people deserve the resources, not in Washington, D.C., but in the rest of the country.
And Mr. Patel, frankly, if that had been your statement, that would be something that would be defensible. It's the rest of it, saying you're going to turn it into a museum of the deep state, that causes repeated questions and concerns from people like myself. Thank you, Mr. Patel.
Before I call on Senator Hawley, I'd like to enter letters into the record from scores of state attorneys general, former U.S. attorneys, former U.S. Department of Justice officials who support the nominee. They state, quote, Mr. Patel will bring to this critically important office is unique and
Chris Coons just illustrated what I was talking about. You don't ask questions that you're not prepared for the answer. He stepped right into it. What did you mean by this? Well, I want to put agents in Idaho, Oklahoma to do their job. And he couldn't recover from that. So you're going to find here that the other Democrats are probably going to watch that and go, oh, you don't ask questions you're not prepared to hear the answer from. This is Josh Hawley.
To attempt to recruit spies or informants into religious institutions in this country, particularly Catholic parishes. Is that appropriate?
I don't believe so, Senator.
Mr. Patel, are you familiar with the recent actions of the FBI in this regard, including this memo that I have right here, making a list of Catholic churches and parishes that they regard as potentially suspect and directing the potential recruitment of informants and other spies, let's be honest, into those parishes?
I'm familiar with that memo, Senator.
Mr. Patel, would you commit to me that you will, if you are confirmed, that you will finally and officially withdraw this memo and make it clear that this is not only unacceptable, but that it is an absolute violation of the First Amendment that every American enjoys under the Constitution of the United States?
If I'm confirmed, Senator, yes.
Will you also commit to me that you will conduct an investigation and find out who wrote this memo, who spread this memo, the field offices involved in this memo? Because I can tell you, we've had your predecessor sit right where you're sitting, and he has repeatedly lied to, there's no other word for it, lied to this committee. He told us initially that it didn't happen, that the FBI didn't make any lists of churches. That's not true. We have it. A whistleblower brought forward the list for us. He said then that only one field office had worked on it. Turns out we know from another whistleblower, multiple field office worked on it. He said that it was never posted on the internal system. It turns out it was. We believe it's still in effect. Will you find out who was involved in this gross abuse of Americans' First Amendment rights? And will you discipline them? And if you possibly can, will you fire them, Mr. Patel, consistent with department policy and law.
Senator, you have my commitment to investigate any matters such as this one that are important to Congress. I will fully utilize, if confirmed, the investigative powers of the FBI to give you the information you require and also to hold those accountable who violated the sacred trust placed in them at the FBI.
I'm glad to hear you say that, and I'm glad you used the word sacred trust, because that's exactly what it is. The FBI is the most powerful law enforcement body in this nation, arguably the most powerful law enforcement body, at least in a free nation in the world. And to have this body corrupted politically such that it is targeting people of faith in this country and then lying about it to this committee and the American people is unimaginable. I'll be honest with you. I never thought this would happen in the United States of America. I just didn't. If you had told me 5 years ago we'd be reading memos like this, I would have said, no way, that's bad fiction. In fact, it's a horrible reality. The department needs to be cleaned up, the agency does, and rights restored and protected. I'm glad to hear you say that. Let me ask you this. Do you think it is appropriate for the FBI to be sending agents, including counterterrorism agents, to the parents of children who went to school board meetings and asked about critical race theory in their schools, asked about the school's masking policy during COVID? Should those parents be treated as domestic terrorists?
Parents who have the courage to ensure their children are taught what they feel is right, and those who have the courage of their convictions to go houses of worship, in my book, will never be domestic terrorists.
I'm delighted to hear you say that. You're familiar, I'm sure, with this memorandum issued by the Attorney General, the last Attorney General, Merrick Garland, directing the FBI and other law enforcement agencies to look into parents who went to these school board meetings. And we know from whistleblowers who've come forward to this committee and given us the evidence that in fact the FBI opened multiple cases against multiple parents across the nation, I believe including in my home state of Missouri. Another gross abuse, incredible political power brought to bear against everyday citizens. Why? Because they went to a school board meeting that they're paying for and asked about what their kids were being taught. Once again, I can't imagine, I couldn't have ever thought this would happen in the United States of America. Will you find out who was involved in this policy within the FBI, who agreed with it, who implemented it, who encouraged it? Will you find out that, Mr. Patel? Will you do an internal investigation? And will you make clear that those who supported this policy are appropriately disciplined? And will you make clear that the FBI will never do something like this again?
If confirmed and pursuant to your congressional request, absolutely, Senator.
Thank you. Let me ask you this. Do you think it's appropriate for the FBI to target people of faith, particularly those who hold pro-life convictions? Do you think it's appropriate for the FBI to single out and target people of faith in order to discourage the exercise of their First Amendment rights?
There can never be a targeting by law enforcement just based on their people's faiths.
And yet, under this last administration, the FBI and DOJ together brought numerous prosecutions under the FACE Act for nonviolent protests. President Trump has recently pardoned some of these folks, but it also includes individuals like Mark Houck from Philadelphia region, from Pennsylvania, who had an FBI SWAT team arrive at his door in the early hours of the morning, armed, of course, terrorizing him and his children, took him into custody. They charged him with a FACE Act violation. Why? Because he took his young son to a peaceful demonstration outside an abortion clinic. When his young son was shoved to the ground, he defended him. Mark Houck was acquitted by a jury, acquitted. Nevertheless, the FBI used their full resources, including a SWAT team, to try and terrorize him. Meanwhile, how many churches that were firebombed or pregnancy care centers that were firebombed, how many of them were protected by the last administration? Just about zero. It is an unbelievable instance of targeting. Mr. Patel, will you end this targeting? If you get to the FBI, if you are confirmed, will you end it? And will you make clear to all agency personnel that there can be no targeting on the basis of religious belief, and this will never happen again in the United States of America, at least not under your watch?
Senator, if confirmed, and it speaks to an issue we were talking about earlier, there will be no such targeting if I'm confirmed as FBI director. And the resources of the FBI, which are funded by the American taxpayer dollars, in the 7 minutes that you and I have been talking about, 2 people have died from fentanyl overdoses, 1 person has been shot to death in this country, and 3 people have been raped. The resources of the FBI will go to that mission set and that mission set alone, because America deserves a better brand of justice, and I'm going to give it to them.
Fantastic. Here's my last question for you. Do you think it's appropriate for the FBI to try and pressure the largest technology corporations in the world, the most powerful corporations in the world, the social media companies, do you think it's appropriate for the FBI to pressure them to censor the political speech of everyday American citizens to try and violate the First Amendment? Is that appropriate, do you think, Mr. Patel?
No, Senator.
Will you put an end to this, Mr. Patel, if you are confirmed at the FBI?
Senator, if confirmed, I will work with Congress to expose any corrupt activities the FBI has participated in, especially involved in the censorship of free speech.
Because we know from the court cases that have been brought across this country, and we know from the voluminous factual finding that was done, and it's in the record, that the FBI and other agencies of this government under the last administration pressured, coerced these social media companies to censor speech of everyday Americans on a range of issues, from the Hunter Biden laptop to COVID, to the Dobbs decision, you name it, they tried to censor them. The Constitution doesn't permit the government to do it. The FBI tried to get the social media companies to do it. Will you end this practice, Mr. Patel, once and for all?
Senator, I will always follow the law. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Blumenthal's next. I want to say, when he's done, so let's see, the 30-minute break would make it about 12:25 or something. I expect you to be back here on time. And I'm going to have Senator Lee, I'm going to go open the Senate up now. Will you chair for me? Okay, thank you. Senator Blumenthal.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, Mr. Patel. Thank you for being here. And thank you for visiting with me in my office at almost exactly the moment that you were talking to me. The Department of Justice was firing more than a dozen lawyers who worked with the special counsel, Jack Smith, simply because they were involved in that case. You've committed that the FBI will not be politicized. So here's your first test. Will you commit that you will not tolerate the firing of the FBI agents who worked with the special counsel's office on these investigations?
Senator, I appreciate the time to visit with you.
It is a yes or no answer, and it is your first test.
Senator, every FBI employee will be held to the absolute same standard, and no one will be terminated for case assignments.
And I'm not going to accept that answer.
Good.
Because if you can't commit that those FBI agents will be protected from political retribution, we can't accept you as FBI director.
All FBI employees will be protected against political retribution.
Those individuals deserve to be protected from Trump retribution. That was your first test. You failed it.
Good.
By saying all FBI employees should be protected?
That is a test of professional diligence, because it is the measure of whether you will stand up and say no to the president if he gives you an unlawful or illegal order. Let me turn to the J6 choir. You know who the J6 prison choir is, don't you?
It's been referenced earlier, yes.
And you know about the song that, in fact, you produced, you promoted, and you used to, as you put it, support, raise awareness and support for the political prisoners still locked in jail. Those J6 choir, were they political prisoners?
I don't know everyone in the J6 choir.
That's what you said.
So.
That's
correct?
not how I read it, Senator.
This is your tweet. That's your whole statement.
Well,
you won't stand behind your own statements made in tweets, countless of them. As a matter of fact, as you put it to Steve Bannon on his show, then we went into a studio and recorded it, mastered it, digitized it, and put it as a song, now releasing it exclusively in the War Room. That was the J6 prison choir song.
And all proceeds were given away to charity to help families.
And you called them political prisoners. Julian Cater, you know what he did?
I don't know who that is, Senator.
Well, he's one of the J6 prison choir.
You seem to know more about it than I do.
Identified in a court filing. And you're saying now you don't know who he is?
Nope.
You glorified him and the rest of that choir? He's the one who sprayed U.S. Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick with pepper spray. Officer Sicknick died the next day. Cater admitted his violence. He pleaded guilty to assaulting a political officer, a police officer. Do you believe that Julian Cater was a political prisoner?
Senator, I'm not familiar with his case. You seem to know a lot more about it than I do. And as I've said repeatedly, I will always utilize my resources to help Americans in need, which is what I was trying to do here. And I've never once advocated for political violence or violence against law enforcement.
Ryan Nichols. Ryan Nichols also pleaded guilty to assaulting a police officer. He was one of the J6 choir. He pushed the crowd against officers, defending a door to the Capitol, and sprayed officers with pepper spray. Is Ryan Nichols a political prisoner?
Same answer, Senator.
How about Jordan Mink,
Same
another
answer.
member of the J6 choir?
I don't know who he is.
James McGrew, a political prisoner?
I don't know who that is.
James McGrew pushed and struck officers and launched a handrail toward them. And you glorified him. You promoted and produced a song to raise money for them. And you now want us to believe you don't know who they are?
No part of that song or anything I've done in my 16 years of government service glorifies or advocates for violence against law enforcement. And the fact that you would be willing to say that in front of these people in the American audience shows how much of a divide we actually have to restore a law enforcement that is constitutionally based, de-weaponized, and depoliticized. You have my commitment to do that. In your office, we had a lot of common ground. I'm committed to working with you on things like Section 230 and making sure the citizens of Connecticut aren't pillaged by Chinese fentanyl.
I welcome your statement, Mr. Patel, but it doesn't answer my question.
Too bad.
And it doesn't go to your credibility in denying you know who these people are after. And I have to say, in this tweet and in others, I have a raft of them. I'm going to ask the chairman that they be made a part of the record. If there's no objection.
Without objection.
You glorified, you promoted, you supported these individuals. Ronald Sadlin, he struck an officer in the head, hand, and shoulders and grabbed another officer. Was he a political prisoner?
I don't know who that is, Senator.
Well, the simple fact is that you knew about the J6 choir. You knew what they did in assaulting and endangering police officers who sought to defend the Capitol on that day, were severely injured, and some, as a consequence, died. I think the FBI deserves better. The men and women in the FBI put their lives on the line every day. I've worked with them as United States Attorney for 4.5 years. And then as Attorney General off and on
You've done a
for 20 years.
job too.
I've admired them for the 14 years that I've been in this body. I think they deserve better. Thank you.
As we turn to Senator Cruz, I'll notice that the statement that he has up does say
All
without.
right, guys, we'll be back later. Thank you for joining me. I have got an appointment to meet, and we're out.